Hello, personal productivity. Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith,
And I'm Augusto Pinaud.
and we're your hosts for Anything But Idle. This is episode 93 for January 24th, 2022. Google wants Apple iMessage to play nice. And of course, the productivity and technology news this week. Of course, each week, Augusto and I scour the interwebs to review and discuss the productivity and technology news headlines of the week. And we usually start that off by talking about some of the productivity blog and podcast episodes that we've come across that we think you might like in the first segment, which is our productivity articles headlines. Augusto, what's our first headline this week?
So the first article we have is from the Art of Manliness, and it's the right and wrong way to journal. The article is interesting; it's a nice read. But what got me obviously was the title. It is a right and a wrong. I've been a heavy journalist, and I do two kinds of journal. The one that I'm ever going to revisit, and that tend to be handwriting, even if it's on the iPad with the Apple Pencil. I will sometimes handwrite, and that is more to it's a thinking exercise or a processing exercise than something I plan to revisit, and mostly because my handwriting is so ugly that it's impossible. Okay, but I also use an application called One Day or Day One. It's One Day or Day One.
Day one.
Day One, and I use also Day One that I've been using for years. I don't even know how many entries are in that thing. Um, and more than go back and say, oh, let me review my journal in the past. I once in a while, as I'm journaling, I look for clues. So if I write, for example, oh, anything but idle, I go to the search box and type anything but idle and see what I have journaled about the topic in the past. That said, do you consider that there is a right or a wrong way? And the article talk about the journaling trap and why, how to get the most and what are the kind of questions you do. Well, what if you don't want any of those questions or you just want to have that place, to vent?
Yeah, I don't think there's any right way or wrong way to journal for everyone. I think there is a right way to journal for you, and it's the way in which you sit down and put thoughts to an external source. And creating that artifact is for you. Your mileage may vary if you abide by the rules of the Art of Manliness's, suggestions here about asking what instead of why or those kinds of things. I think it's a good article if you feel like you need guardrails in terms of your journaling. If you feel like for some reason you are being challenged by sitting down and getting those thoughts out, there are so many different ways in which you could do this. You could follow Julia Cameron's morning pages, where you're just letting loose all of the emotions and any thoughts that come in kind of a fluid river of capture. You can do this in a very structured environment like I do. I have a series of questions I ask myself every day, and I follow those questions fairly methodically. There are others of us who, just like you, capture what's on your mind, and you're just kind of, thought and emotion processing in a way. There's no right or wrong way for all of us. I think we need to each choose a way that works for us and helps us to deal with whatever the issue or the reason for us capturing that journal. For example, if I'm writing my journal to write a memoir someday, then yeah, sure, I want to capture some of the facts along with the emotions, as the article notes. But at the same time, if I'm writing because I'm anxiety ridden and I want to reduce that anxiety, then I actually don't care about the facts associated with that. I just want to get the emotion out, so that I can know that it's parked somewhere, so I can go focus on the more productive aspects of my day. So I think those are the issues. And I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not purporting to tell you the way in which you should do your inner work, right? And so I think that it's important for us to remember that we should do the inner work that's going to help us be most productive and most connected to why we're journaling, right? So if you're connected to journaling for some particular reason, then I would look for articles that focus on journaling to get to those ends, to get to those outcomes. And I think how I would look at it.
Great. So our next article is the 10 plus 2 times 5 method to get you more on the day. And basically, the method is simply get an hour, divide it in 10 minutes, and give a 2 minute break. And it's a modification to a certain extent of the Pomodoro technique of Francisco Cirillo. Make it even a shorter period. So you make 10 minutes, take 2 minute break, 10 minutes, take 2 minute break, and 5 times of that will make you an hour. And you then rinse and repeat to the next hour. Um, it's obviously thought with the idea of beating procrastination. I don't have many activities that can be fit on those models, sadly. Plus, I, the half an hour works well for me. Um, the half an hour blocks, 15-minute blocks. Sometimes, most of the time, it doesn't. But 10 minutes, it's too short for most of the stuff I do. I, I don't know what about you, but how many hours can you put in 10 minutes blocks? It's not many for me.
It would take quite a bit of extra work than what I'm already doing in kind of my GTD inspired system. I have context based lists. So I choose what I'm going to do based on the actions that I have available to me based on those limiting criteria. And so the reality is that I know at any given moment what I need to be working on based on what I can be working on. And so the idea of shoving it into these tiny bits of time is not productive for me in the efficiency perspective because I've already done the work up front in my weekly review. So I just don't see it being useful to me. That being the case, I don't think this is lacking utility for folks. I think that if you're going to do a much more refined concept of, say, Dr. Neil Fiore's The Unschedule, and you want to do this in these shorter time bits, and it works for you, right? Each of the incremental actions you need to take throughout your day are like little, not mini projects, but basically projects that fit into those spaces that might work for you. I can't say it wouldn't. I know that it wouldn't work for me just because of the nature of my work and the
Right.
way, but I, in like back when I was in my real estate world, I could see where modifying this because it wouldn't still be 10 minutes. I would still probably need a good 20 minutes to process any particular file. But then say I would take, 25/5 and move it a little bit closer to that concept of like 25 on, 5 minute break, 25 on, 5 minute break, and kind of go from that perspective. And even then to this day, I think I still work well when I am tracking against a 25/5 schedule and on each of the hours kind of checking in against what Peter Bregman talks about in terms of his, concept of checking in each hour and spending time just to correct course throughout the day, his 18-minute ritual concept. So I like the idea of taking those points to recalibrate where you're going in the day. And I think all of these things, all of these Pomodoro technique or others, is really just a matter of clicking yourself out of getting caught in the current of emotion and just having a moment to sit back and say, okay, let's reflect on what I just did. Let me reflect on what I could be doing and gaining greater control based on that. So I'm thinking that's where this provides value to people.
Yeah.
So choose the cadence that works for you in terms of working and breaking and reflecting and planning appropriately throughout the day.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's 25:55 for me, and it beeps on my watch every 25 and 55s. And so
And we talked about that. I believe we talked about that in a productivity cast episode. So folks,
we have talked 55:25 on
yeah, so folks can go back to the 25:55 episode on Productivity Cast if they want to learn more about that. Okay, on to our next article.
So the next one is from the Noble Academy, and it's breaking the cycle of burnout in the workplace. And the problem with burnout is the rationalization that you do as a workaholic in recovery, as I call myself. Okay, I have used all of those excuses in the article, okay, or some of them at least. Okay, I'm the limp chimp. Oh, well, some people don't get it. Okay, my family may be counting on me. And with that, there was a time in my life where work was the life. There was nothing outside of that. And I I don't recall for me the burnout. I'm sure the burnout happened when I decided to walk away from that career. Okay. But it was not an incident. It was a long period of time, and then at a moment I say I'm done, and and I walk away. But it's important, Now as a coach, I don't see it as at that time, but as a coach, I work more with people to find how to avoid this and how to bring you more to a balance stage. And something that I tell clients often is balance is unique. The balance that works for me may not work for Ray, may not work for the listeners. That is fine. Figure it out and define what balance means to you, and then aim to that. Most likely, I still work more hours than some people want to work, and that is fine. But I get some flexibility. I get to take the kids to school. I take to pick the kids to school. I take them to the swimming and other things. I really involve in my kids' life. That for me is the balance. I don't care about the work. I'm lucky that I enjoy the work, so I don't. It's something that is really fun for me. But the balance came for me when I decided, okay, work need to fit into the kids' schedule in my case, and how I'm going to have that flexibility that I will be able to grab my laptop right now and run, so I can take them to whatever activity it is. So that's what I think is important on this article. Yes, burnout happened. There are here, what, one, two, three, six, five ideas that you can use if you are on those. But careful how you are justifying yourself. Workaholics are great at justifying themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the best advice in the article is that if you are feeling levels of burnout, kind of that up and down cycle of manic, and then depression, and then manic, and then depression, or mania and then depression kind of cycle in psychological parlance. But in the burnout, you feel refreshed and then burnout, refreshed and then burnout in some kind of cycle. You should probably talk to someone, find a trusted friend, a trusted colleague, potentially seek out psychotherapy and figure out what is causing you to feel like you're not enough, and or whatever's going on under the hood. I can't say that that's the case, but like there's something going on under the hood telling you that you need to be more than you already are, and you need someone you trust to tell you that you are enough the way you are. And that is difficult, right? Because there's something underlying that's speaking to you, forcing you to want to work more than you need to. It might be financial, it might be any number of particular reasons, and it's good to talk to someone that you trust to be able to kind of uh, figure out what's under the hood, and then do some of those behavioral interventions that are necessary to make yourself burn out less. And it's not about never burning out again, because you may, but the point is to burn out less, so that you're capable of really having a sustainable practice, that you're not going to feel bad about yourself at the end of the day for what you didn't do, but celebrating the successes of what you actually did accomplish in any given day. And I know that I'm challenged by that. I get to the end of some days where, if I don't look back at what I have done, then I can easily warp my sense of reality and say, oh, I could have done 50 other things, when in reality I didn't. I already did 100 things today. Why am I beating myself up about the 50 things I didn't get done, when I actually got quite a substantial amount of work done? And this is one of those cases where this has nothing to do with anything outside of me. This is inside of me that needs to be consistently checked to make sure that I'm in reality, which is, I'm highly productive and I did get work done, and I should value the work that I did do because I chose to do that in the moment. And I have to trust my intuition quite often throughout the day. And so I need to trust that I did the right work at the time I did. That's why I do a weekly review. I plan out the work I'm going to do this week, because it is the most meaningful work. And sometimes, at least for me, the reason I will say to myself, oh, that felt, like I didn't do the right things, is because, considering the limiting criteria of what I could do in that particular time, I chose to do the things that I needed to do because of those things, those limiting criteria. And that meant I had to push off other things. And that's the cognitive dissonance that you feel about having to prioritize the most important thing first. And that's always going to be the nature of it. Or the stuff you did was really mundane. It was necessary but really mundane, right? So you feel like, oh, I didn't do the stuff that was fun. I did the stuff that had to be done, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes just a little bit of a friction piece there. All right, on to our next article from Facile Things.
So the article talks about or explore the link between exercise and productivity and bring two quotes. And one is from a 2005 study by the University of Bristol that suggests that exercise before work or during lunchtime help eliminate stress and boost productivity. The other one is a quote or quoting Richard Branson, who in an interview was asked, what make him more productive, and he said, train, being fit. And at least on that interview, Branson was quoting that he gets 3 to 4 hours more of productivity because his ability of stay on focus, stay concentrate. So I am not a great exercise person. I have growing into understanding the importance of it, but I didn't grow up exercise. I didn't grow up, on any of those. And at some point, I was too fat to do any of that. So, but it is, as the article says, well, this is the time of the year where everybody put more exercise on the list. It is in mine.
Yeah, and again, the goal is to kind of push through and keep that momentum going beyond the initial kind of phase of really being excited about New Year's resolutions, and getting fit is a start of the year kind of thing, and then it kind of subsides. You need to re-engage with that process and keep it more exciting even beyond that initial kind of honeymoon phase of it in that sense. I have a lot of thoughts about exercise and productivity. I think they are fundamentally linked to each other. Our biological fitnesses need to always be supported for us to be productive. And, like if you don't have the physical fitness to get up out of bed, or if you, for some reason, don't have the physical fitness to have the physical stamina, like the literal physical stamina to be able to do the work you need to do, you would figure that out. And yet we're biological creatures. Our mental emotional health is based on our physiological needs, and we tend to ignore those in deference to just the baseline stuff. And so I think that it's really important for us to continue to explore that. There's a lot more research that needs to be done, but I think we each can individually know that a balanced diet, making sure we're getting enough sleep, making sure that we're active in our daily lives. Remember, humans are meant to be moving, and we spend a lot of time not moving, whether we're seated or standing. If we're not moving, we're still not moving. So I really love my sit stand desk. I love being able to stand up, and I do feel more productive when I'm engaged in that standing position, but I'm still not necessarily moving, which is why I have my watch timing me to move from my desk so that I'm actively moving, which inevitably makes me more productive, because just stepping away from my desk means that I'm looking at distances beyond my computer monitor, which keeps my eyes healthy. Like those kinds of things that are just like these little tiny interventions in keeping my whole body healthy as I'm engaging with my work. And so don't think that some of these things that take you away from your work aren't maintenance items that are helping you be more productive sustainably. So all right, on to our next article from zenhabits.net. Leo Babauta.
So Leo Babauta talks about what is his process of planning of the year. Obviously, start why it's important, how to deal with the burnout that we just talked, how he plans his year. So, reflect on the past, clear things out, imagine what I really want, start to choose, and create then a structure for make these plans happen. And it is important uh, to plan. Where do you want to go? I don't remember where or who said, if you don't plan for your own path, somebody will tell you where to go, and you will be doing other people calls. So it is really important. So it is a really, as many of the things of Leo, I enjoy Leo about that. So it is a really well written article, and if you have not planned your year yet and you have not gone through that exercise, this may be a good guide for you to go and start.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Great. Next article. Now on to Charlie Gilkey, Productive Flourishing.
Yes. So block the notifications so you can protect your action spam. And the reality is the companies want that thing, want that, you are, if you are not careful, you will get, I don't remember the numbers now, but it was seconds, okay, between one ding and the other ding, between email and social media and Twitter and everything else. The problem is every time that happens, you lose the focus. It's been proven scientifically extensively that we cannot multitask. So if you don't keep those distractions, if you don't limit those distractions, what happens is that's what you get. You cannot do your best job. And there are help available. There are applications on the iPads. You can select now the focus and define what has, on or off those distractions. There are many things that you can do. Even my cell phone for years, I think I did that around 2013. So now we're going to almost 10 years since I did that. I set the default ringtone to a no silence, and you need to earn the right to make sound. The phone vibrates, but the phone is on the desk. It doesn't vibrate that loud. So I can have it in there, and the vibration, I on purpose pick one that is almost like that's it. Okay. So I need to be, that's fine. Leave the voicemail, send the text message. The next time that I put my attention out of that on the phone, I will find all that and then I will be able to respond accordingly. But by general rule, most people don't make noise on my phone.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more. I don't want to say draconian, but literally, I just recently got a new laptop, which is not uncommon. But I got a new one that's going to be a part of my regular, everyday carry, and so I got the Samsung Galaxy Book Pro, and you better believe the first thing I do, I have a startup checklist for all of my new devices, and the first thing is to shut off all notifications. Not like I shut down all notifications on everything that could possibly do that, which requires a little bit of in-depth looking through the system. Like, is Microsoft Edge going to start prompting me with things? Is the mail application going to start bothering me with things? They had a bit of bloatware on here with some McAfee security software. I don't want that garbage on my laptop, so I had to go through and get rid of that because it kept prompting me for the subscription, give you 30 days or something like that. And then I was like, nope, this has got to go. And so, just viciously getting rid of all of the notifications that the system could give, including the update notifications. I want them to do the updates and then schedule the restart of the device outside of my time when I'm sleeping. Go do that stuff. Don't bother me about it. And I think that everybody needs to kind of have whatever level they're comfortable with, but I want no notifications, and then I want to slowly but surely bring on the notifications that I do want only on the devices that I want. And for those of you who might only be working on one or two devices, phone and a computer, that's fine. But for me, where I have 6 devices in front of me at any given time, I need to make sure that I'm not getting dinged and binged across any of them because then it's a cacophony, right? And unlike you, like, I can't even have my phone do a little buzz. That's enough to like pull me away. It's just too much. And so I'm just more sensitive, I think, to those kinds of notifications than others. And so I have to make sure that I put myself into so when my watch is connected, the phone needs to go silent, which is an automated connection between my phone and my watch. Like I go through a pretty aggressive mechanism for getting rid of those kinds of distractions so I can really truly focus. And I don't take live phone calls, right? So that's just unfortunately, I get a lot of spam calls that get through lately. It's a frustration lately. It's been a lot.
You want to buy a car insurance, I sell it to you.
Right? Isn't it? I don't understand it. It's just a bit crazy at the moment. But anyway, so I've had to now go even more aggressive and eliminate phone calls from ringing as well. And I'm sure there's a business impact on me because of that, but it's just too much distraction getting all of these spam phone calls and spam text messages that come through. So I think it's a really good practice and a good reminder here from Charlie Gilkey to take some time to think, what is pulling you away from your attention, your faculty of being able to attend to the thing in front of you by virtue of these, is TikTok or Clubhouse or any of these other social networks, pinging and dinging you to come over to their, wonderful, interesting post at the moment. That novelty is raping you of your ability to do the meaningful work that you need to do. And so I think it's an important thing to keep in mind. All right. We have reached the end of our blog and podcast articles, our productivity articles for this week. We're going to take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsor this week, which is Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. And then when we get back, we'll cover the tech articles, our business and finance segment, which we've added this year. We're going to talk about our new tools, our new productivity resources this week, and then we'll cover the featured story of the week. And so we'll see you after the break.
While working in person may be normal for you, it's unlikely your coworkers are as interested in being productive as you are. Or working remotely or from home can be isolating, and there's something powerful about being with productive people, even virtually, that helps you be more engaged. If a flavor of these sounds familiar, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club is for you. Co-working Space is a virtual work community designed to help members be more effective and efficient in their work and personal lives. At its core, we provide goal tracking and host focused action sessions throughout the week for accountability and camaraderie. Visit anythingbutidle.com/coworking to learn more. Co-working Space lives inside Personal Productivity Club, a digital community for personal productivity enthusiasts, so you can find people who use methods and tools you do too. Again, head over to anythingbutidle.com/coworking to see how Co-working Space can help you be more productive. And now, back to our show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Anything But Idle. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith, joined with Augusto Pinaud for the second half of our show, which is our tech articles to start. So what is our first tech article this week, Augusto?
The first tech article, it's kind of sad because, yes, I am a user of 1Password, but I have also recommend LastPass in the past. And according to the article, apparently they have been holding users' passwords hostage. So it may be, as the article says, well, they have a lot of bugs in the desktop plugin that they have not yet fixed, or it seems different. But they seem, what the article is describing, they may be violating the Article 20 of the GDPR, and they are really making difficult for the users to extract their passwords and things so they can move to a different platform.
Yeah, I would imagine that I don't know where their head is, but if it's up their rear and they're not paying attention to the clear writing on the wall that portability of our own data needs to be had, then they should get pushback from their users. I'm a LastPass user and I will continue to be, but I absolutely want the ability to take my data out of their system and to migrate it anywhere I want to. So I think it's important and imperative, really, for something as important as our password management to push against them in anything like that. And I say that to Evernote, I say that to Trello, I say that to all of them. Google has really led the charge here, and I hope that Apple steps up to the plate here, because Apple equally has not done a very good job of being able to have portability of some of the data that really is like underlying pieces of your system, and I think they could do a better job of that. But for the most part, I think that we should be strong with all tech companies that we own the data that is in our accounts, and we should be able to migrate that data, or at least have access to it for purposes of export and backup. It should be trivial to do that. Just like Google Takeout, I should be able to go to takeout.apple.com and download all data associated with my Apple account. And so I think that we need to push back on companies a little bit more than we currently do, and we can't leave this up to legislators. This needs to be both a consumer based and business based pushback, as well as a legislative piece combined. All right, on to our next story about Notion.
Next story is on Notion, and they add a new way to navigate between the databases pages, to open any database page and then click on the top left to go to the previous one, and work in is working in all views. So again, we are seeing Notion moving forward to making their application a lot stronger. I'm not a Notion user, but I know Art Gelwix, who has been here in the show, is, and he was one that was really happy with that.
Yeah, I actually recently migrated a library over to Notion to kind of play with it. I had all the records in another system, and I really like the fact that now you can switch between the various uh, uh, database pages via keyboard shortcut
Mhm.
on the Mac and Windows side. So very, very helpful to be able to switch between them. And still, I think that sync blocks in Notion are so, so powerful. And I just love the ability for you to be able to have that sync block and put them in multiple places and have those synchronized pieces as well. So there's a lot of really nice features in Notion. I just still think they're too complicated for the average user. Notion is a highly complicated tool, and most people want something very simple that they can organize with. And so I think that ends up being the differentiator for yourself if you're choosing something like a OneNote or an Apple Notes or Evernote or any of those more simplified interface user experience type note-taking applications versus a Notion or an Airtable or Coda or Fibery. Those end up being a little bit more complicated to set up because you have so much flexibility within which you can kind of organize the data. So it just ends up being like, I also think about use case. Like I wouldn't want to set up a library database in Evernote. That wouldn't make a lot of sense to me. Whereas I would not want to keep a journal in Notion because
Right.
that seems like over manufacturing, and I'm not one to say that I don't over manufacture my system, right? Like I'm the first one to raise my hand, I know, but at the same time, I have to put a check on that and say, no, really, I don't want to overdo the system. I want to make it right size to what I need, and I think Notion is a little bit overkill for many of those things that you need. Okay, on to our next story.
Our next story is Google Play new focus into becoming a more comprehensive digital wallet. And even that back in October, apparently Google Pay canceled Plex for the bank accounts and the cards and all that.
That was in partnership
Apparently,
with Citi, right? They were working with Citi to do that, or A Bank. They were working with A Bank to bring out the Plex card. They canceled that project, and I
yeah,
think it's because they wanted to be able to recalibrate what was going on with cryptocurrency and some other things here.
correct. And then, well, now you will be able to, or they're trying to bring all that, not only, bring that and many other things. So that turns into your digital wallet. They're already doing airline passes, apparently vaccine passports too. So maybe the Google Wallet, it's going to finally come to be something a lot more powerful.
Yeah, so they're not doing those things yet. So tickets, airline passes, and vaccine passport, all of those components are going to be soon caked into Google Pay. And I would just say that one of the things that they have done recently is in the Google Pay application, they have kind of hidden, like my library card is inside of Google Pay, and they've hidden it now. So when I go to the library, it used to actually prompt a notification at the top of my screen. It was really nice, very fluid, and now all those things seem to be kind of gone. I don't like that. I want to be able to scroll through my various loyalty cards, my various library cards, of which I have many. And I want to be able to see those and pull those up. It is as easy as searching, right? You can just go to the search bar and search for those things, but there's a lot more like offers and salesy stuff up front in the application and a little less functionality up front. And I understand why they're doing that, because people just don't even know those things are there if you hide it from them. But I hope that they can kind of get their head around this project, because Google has such a strong capability of helping me with the way in which, say, an application like Truebill or Intuit's Mint, these kinds of applications that help you manage your finances. Google has so much of my data. The financial data mixed in with it would be even more helpful to me with the right setup. But they just haven't gotten their act together in this category. So, it's kind of just like, okay, I'm using them for the NFC payments so that I can pay by phone. at the grocery store, but that's pretty much it, in terms of things. And adding Coinbase support doesn't do anything for me. I don't really care about holding cryptocurrency in Google Pay. Like that's not a thing I need. All right, there are plenty of sufficient cryptocurrency wallets out there, both hard and software wallets that I can use. This seems like a bit of a distraction. I need to see them really make strong forward movement so that I can actually be more productive with my finances in the space I'm already playing, right? I'm in the Google ecosystem. Make this useful for me, right? For example, make our Google Payments profiles operational. I mean, it just seems like so outdated, antiquated, and just not very useful. So when you go to pay.google.com from the browser, it takes you to your Google Payments profiles and shows you what subscriptions you are subscribed to and other payment mechanisms and whatever else. And the whole system is just kind of like, come on, this could be so much nicer, right? They could bring this Google Pay stuff where they have offers to the browser, and so that I could see them and I can look at them a little bit more. I want to see it a larger screen, just experience it better, and they don't. So I feel like they need to get the Google Pay team on the same page as consumers, because it seems a bit off track here. And I love Google, but come on. Let's not mince when it comes to the stupidity that they have going on there in the Google Pay world. Okay, on to our next article.
Our next article is about Windows 11. Windows released the build 22538 with voice access, updates, more fixes. Windows 11 has been an interesting because it was something that apparently nobody wanted, but everybody's been happy installing. Before they release it, the comments on the street from the people was, I don't know, I don't want to install it. And the people that I know has been installed, early adopters and non-early adopters, have been really, really happy with what Windows 11 has brought to the table.
I think Microsoft got this one right, which is make everybody naysay up front, and then once the application is on the system, everybody's just pleasantly surprised that it's not breaking anything. And like Windows 11 for me has been, the easiest transition from Windows 10, from any other Windows version. I've always felt a little bit of the shift of, okay, these things are not working for me, those kinds of things. But really, the number one thing I recommend to everybody on Windows 11 is right click on the Windows icon and you will find all the things that were missing for some reason in the interface. But other than right clicking on the Windows icon, really everything else about Windows 11 has been pretty much surface. They haven't really been anything that I've found to cause me great alarm or great adulation. It's just, okay, it works. Everything just works. And so everything, at least that I use, and I'm, pretty heavy keyboard user, so I want everything on the keyboard to be working for me. And I haven't found any, major issues with regard to the way in which Windows 11 operates in my day-to-day. So that's been a nice, benefit in the upgrade. All right, on to
the next news. That is what is the task board and how to use it. And task board, it's a way to integrate your Google Task and make it look, like boards, make it look more like Trello. Is this a solution for a problem or a problem looking for a solution? I'm not.
No. Actually, sure. This is I'm using Tasks board right now,
okay.
And I'm actually very pleased with the way in which they've set up this application. The free version is very generous in the way in which they have given you the capability of setting up and utilizing Tasks board. But for those of you who are in the Google Tasks ecosystem, Google Tasks has left a lot to be desired in its interface. It's caked into very nicely into Google Calendar as well as in Gmail, and also within its own separate world inside of Spaces if you're in the Google Workspace environment. And so I like all of the things that Google Tasks represents, especially now that we have recurring tasks in Google Tasks. But the biggest problem for me is the lack of flexibility with that interface. You get that little tiny side static bar, and you are capable of clicking on a special link that you can find on the internet that takes it to a full screen page, but nothing is fluid as the tasks bar. And I actually think I brought this up as my productivity resource of the week a few weeks ago. And so task board, I think, is a really, really good tool if anyone is using Google Tasks and they want to kind of bring Google Tasks to that next level for managing projects and also team collaboration, because the Tasks Board Premium gives you then that greater level of managing Google Tasks with your team. It's really, really well done. I really like the way in which it's implemented the system. It doesn't have everything, but it also shouldn't, in a way, because it's just taking all of your Google Tasks data and synchronizing that so that you have a little bit more control over the visualizing of that work, right? Like just like a personal Kanban system. So I really like it. I think this is a good article for anybody who's interested and wants to get to know more about Google Tasks Board. All right, next up.
Our next tip is Dropbox. Dropbox, I use Dropbox. I rely on that. And when the Silicon M1s came out for Apple, so we're not interested in that. So finally, they decide to release, at least in beta. So for beta testers, right now there is a Dropbox application that runs on the M1, on the Apple chipset, and they're testing, and hopefully soon we will see now the official Dropbox application instead of what we're using right now. That is the one made for the Intel chipset.
Yeah, I'm glad they're listening to their users and they're responding. No one's perfect, and we see big players in the market make big mistakes all the time, and so I think fondly of Dropbox and Box and SugarSync and many of these other applications that are challenging Microsoft, Apple, and Google with their products, OneDrive, iCloud, and Google Drive, respectively. It's very difficult to challenge those companies and do well. And so all of these companies that are doing that work and doing it well, I give them great credit to. That's one of the reasons why I give great credit to any of the note-taking applications, right? Because they're challenging, again, Microsoft, Apple, and Google, and each of them have the capability of giving away free products to their users that are very competent. And yet some of us just don't want to have all of our data in one system, right? It's just a desire not to have Apple, Google, or Microsoft own all of us all of the time. And so I give a little bit of deference to Dropbox here. Maybe not so much to LastPass, get your act together, but to Dropbox, I can easily see how this is just an oversight on their part, and they've clearly made a correction. So, all right, on to our business and finance segment. And so we just want to keep people up to date in terms of the business of personal productivity. It's a big market, and I like to think that we can highlight here some of the interesting things going on in the world. And speaking of LastPass and the password management market, we've got a bit of news in that space.
So 1Password unlocked at 620 million round for a Series C, and that brings the valuation of the company to 6.8 billions.
Yep, that's amazing. That's amazing. Good on them.
Big number. So we are happy to see. 1Password is what I personally use, and I'm happy to see this kind of news. Means I don't need to worry about them.
Absolutely. And if anybody is coming across any of this kind of business and finance type news, please send it along to us, because we want to make sure that we're reporting to everyone really what's happening in the business of productivity as much as in the world of productivity. And I think it's a really important part of our dialogue here. And it just goes to show that, if quote unquote a little company like 1Password is valued at 6.8 billion, look at all of the other challengers in the market that may be valued equally or larger because of their user base. I'm sure LastPass has a much larger user base than 1Password. And I don't really know if that's true. That's conjecture. But you can imagine how much more valuation comes to those companies, and that means that they have that much more reason to make sure that they are taking care of their users. And so with that, we're going to move on to our productivity resources of the week. And so, of course, every week, Augusto and I scour the interwebs for all the various stories and news that we bring to you. And in the productivity resources of the week, we want to bring to you resources we think you might use, things that we think might be useful to you. And so the first thing is actually an iOS application that is a note-taking application I recently came across, and I thought was really interesting. It got a really good review, and I thought I would bring it to everyone's attention in case you were looking at this. So this is an application called Note Yourself. Now it's only available on iOS, so this is designed for the iPhone specifically right now. And so this developer has created this note-taking application that is designed around chat. So kind of like some of these email applications that create a chat-based functionality out of your email, so you're emailing back and forth, feels more like texting, which for me like kind of reduces the overall feelings of being quote unquote more formal, especially internally between team members. Well, this allows you to basically chat your notes into a note system, and so they actually call the notes chats. And I was playing around with it earlier today, and I thought it was just really interesting for certain types of notes where, for me, they would be ephemeral and they're not things that I want to keep around for a very long time, but I want to be able to just capture them in a fluid, quick way on, in my case, the iPad, because I use Google Pixel phones as my primary phones. So I wouldn't use this in anywhere that was outside my office because it'd be only for that. But just being able to have a place where I can capture those things that are maybe ephemeral and very easy to capture. Note Yourself seems to be a nice way to do that. So if anybody's interested, they can check it out. Note Yourself is send to self is the name of the application, and it seems like it's about $3 USD in the App Store. It's well rated. Seems like it has a lot of neat features to come, and a nice feature happens in, I forget where I've picked it up. It may have been Tech Radar or in TechCrunch or something like that. They did a really good review of it and spoke about how well it adapted to that particular writer's workflow. So something to check out. All right, Augusto, what is your productivity resource this week?
Mine is a physical thing. They are the Eagle Creek packet pouches, and I have a bunch of them actually, and I use them to put the cables, to put the things. Not every time I want to walk outside of my office, I want to carry every cable, every connection that I have. So these packs allows me to have them ready. So they have one for the iPad, one for the MacBook, one for the other iPad, and I can just pick and choose what I'm going to carry or not carry and leave behind without needing to open and try to configure every time. That will never happen. But so I'm going to go, do I need to charger? No, then I just need to bring any of this. Oh, I'm going to do a presentation, then I carry the bag that has all the connectors, the cables, the power source, so I can do a presentation. And that way I have all the accessory parts all organized in little packs that I can take in and out of the bag. So it's been something that has helped my productivity for years.
Fantastic. Yeah, I have these as kind of shipping cubes for traveling, but having these kinds of like fungible packs for work bags sounds also kind of interesting to me. It's kind of like in at least the women's world of like what do you call them, purses and so forth. They have those organizers you can kind of put inside of your purse, and then that way you can quickly switch between one fashion bag and another. I like this concept of doing this in the work setting, so you can kind of pull them out of one packet and go to the next, especially as it relates to chargers. I'd like to have one packet just dedicated to chargers, so I didn't have to worry about having the right chargers with me at all times. I have one for adapters, but not for the chargers themselves. But I could almost see myself just purchasing duplicate chargers for every device that travels with me, so that it's just always there in the packet, ready to go, and I don't need to think about it in that sense. So I like that. Thank you for sharing.
So then we come to this feature story of the week. And there has been articles come and articles go. The first one was on Macworld saying, hey, Google give up beating iMessage. Now wants Apple to join iMessage. And then Macworld, I think it was, came with another article saying, well, iMessage is not that great. Let's be clear. And then later on, Mike Rumors also came with another article in which they talk about this Google executive saying, no, 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 we don't want them to come to the Google store. We really want to adopt the RCS, the Rich Communication Services Protocol. But all that, regardless if they go one place to the other, the reality is that it will be really nice to have a uniform, something like what I have with Telegram. And I've been pushing people to Telegram over text messages because of that, because how unreliable that gets to be. And I remember many years back when WhatsApp came up. And WhatsApp was an incredible solution, especially for a person who deal more than their current country. So for me at that time, I was doing business, it was many Latin American and Canadian country and Canadian Latin American countries and Canada. I mean, that's what happened the other day. And it was fantastic because it turned to be a more universal way to communicate with everybody than the platform at the time that was the BlackBerry Messenger. BlackBerry Messenger was the first thing that you have the ability to send messages anywhere in the world without having those ridiculous fees. When the iMessage came, it was really nice. I could send people who I knew were iPhone users, and I can send them anywhere without the payment. It is time that the big powers of this, Google and Apple, sit and define one that is universal, and it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that the arguments against Apple having iMessage be siloed and dominant on its own devices is kind of a flat argument. Most of my reasoning for wanting them to integrate is, of course, is selfish, right? Like it's selfish interest, which is that I want to make sure that I am not having to keep multiple devices just to fluidly manage something that I don't want to manage on other devices, right?
Mm-hmm.
I get messages mostly by accident from clients. I'm training people on how to use technology, right? So I have to remember that sometimes people use technology in ways that they don't know is going to work, and that happens a lot with my clients. They will message me, and because my phone number and email address are tied to Apple's iMessage ecosystem, I'll all of a sudden on my iPad start getting messages, or on my MacBook, I'll start getting messages from clients who think that they're texting me and they're actually iMessaging me, and that's pulling things out of my world because my world's not in Apple Messages. And so I then have to use that as a teachable moment, right? Like, don't message me
A
here,
better
please.
word.
Yeah. What's that?
I said it's a better world.
No, not by any stretch of your imagination, sir. Like I would rather train them on how to use Telegram before I had them, pull me into iMessage. And it's not because iMessage is better or worse in any way, shape, or form, other than the fact that it's not in my system. So I'll put up right up front that this is purely self-interest in me wanting to not have to manage in that way. I think there are societal benefits to having at least an ecosystem whereby we can manage these tools together. So I'm always going to be for not having Google, Microsoft, Apple, or otherwise control a messaging platform, which is why I think Signal and others like Telegram and Wire, once upon a time, because now Wire's gone enterprise, but and certainly not WhatsApp, no offense, but I don't want Meta involved in my communications life. The goal here is to basically have an independent party that we don't have to worry about, sucking that data into, like most of my chat messages are with people like you and friends and family, where it's ephemeral messages. I don't need that stuff to stick around forever. It's not something that I need for those purposes. And where I do want those messages to stay around forever, I can select them. I can pin them and say, okay, save those things for later, that kind of thing. I would love for Apple and Google to work with one another purely because I think that it would open it up to a greater world conversation for many, many people who have family in different countries and in different places. Apple iMessage is just stuck being a US mostly focused thing, right? Because if you're not a well-developed nation with a really strong telco that's willing to work with Apple, you're pretty much cut out of that world. Plus, in most of the let's call them undeveloped nations of the world, they're all Android. So if you're not working with them, then you're not going to really have a lot of Apple devices sitting in the hands of users. And so, just from a an egalitarian perspective, I think it would be helpful to have an open ecosystem. I will say though, I'm pretty pleased with Apple's bringing FaceTime to the browser. I never thought that would happen, and here we
I
are.
never thought that will happen either. As the Apple fan, official Apple fan, I never thought that will happen.
Yeah, so I think that they have room for improvement when it comes to opening up their services. And I think this actually also makes for a good argument because they are becoming more and more a services company, right? Apple Music, the Apple TV, and more they are being a service focused company, not just devices, that it may make sense over time that their services then allow, like I would love for a technology whereby I could chat with friends, maybe not me, I would never do this, but but like the idea of like having your Apple Music open and being able to listen with friends who also have Apple Music and also use chat in the same thing. So you're kind of like in this little listening studio with your friends listening to music together, kind of having a little party. FaceTime I think has some features similar to that. I know Facebook definitely has this feature in it. So why would you not want to kind of infuse messaging in and across the ecosystem? And that means having your services capable of being purchased by people who are not on Apple devices. And so, especially with Apple, are they call homes? Is it the home devices? What are the
The
home? Yeah.
HomePod.
HomePod, yes. So having Apple HomePods now, all of those things extend their services, and so why wouldn't you want iMessage to extend to those services as well, connected to phones that may not be Apple only or not be Apple devices? So I see a lot of options here that may push Apple ultimately to choose doing a kind of a mea culpa here, and or not mea culpa even, but just like, okay, we're going to start to give you iMessage in places where we ultimately didn't before. I think they could do that in the browser.
I think there is more option that Apple create the iMessage app for Chrome for Google than they will
Integrate with RCS. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I think that still makes sense. I mean, if we think about RCS is only still supported by a few telcos, right? So mobile providers around the world have not like summarily embraced Google RCS. Here in the States, we have a little bit more power and control because Google is CITES tier, and they've been able to force the big four to kind of break down, right? Acquiesce to it. But that's going to be a much bigger and stronger argument in Europe with Orange, and going to the telcos in the African nations. It's going to be a bigger, longer road ahead for them in those spaces. But I think it's also a good, useful thing for us all. I would love to be able to securely chat with family and friends overseas, and Google RCS gives me that capability. So as Google continues to roll out and become stronger with RCS, I think that will provide more people with a greater sense of security and communications. And hopefully Apple at some point gives greater access to iMessage in a web browser or mobile application. And even if it's not connected to RCS, at least I don't have to have an Apple device in order to be able to utilize those services. And I think that's the best we're probably going to get out of these two companies that are clearly rivals in many different verticals. All right. With that, that's our discussion on the featured story of the week, and on to, we have an announcement.
We have an announcement, yes. And if you are a user of Google Suite Legacy, uh, you know, you have until July to upgrade to Workspace for Google, and you know more about that. But it was really interesting. I didn't remember that G Suite Legacy was basically 16 years of free apps.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Oh, yeah. And I still have a G Suite Legacy account that I've just been using as like a test account. I use it for like demos and stuff. And so I've just had it for all these years, and now they're going to make me start paying up for it as well. So, but there were I had a lot of clients I pushed to create those G Suite accounts originally because it was free. You got up to 10 users, and they over time have been limiting. And so I've been moving clients from G Suite to Workspace because you were being limited in certain capabilities. But yeah, I mean, you can't you can't argue with getting 16 free years of G Suite, now Google Workspace. And so in July, those accounts will be migrated. My understanding is that those folks who are going from legacy free will be getting a very substantial discount to when they make the shift over. But by the beginning, I guess mid June, you'll need to start making some plans for the migration, because they're going to move you over and start billing you in July. So if you're planning to move elsewhere, I don't know why you would, but if you were planning to make a move, I would certainly start doing that planning now, because you just can't do that overnight. And then, of course, if you plan to stay with Google Workspace, start putting in the infrastructure that is your billing information, making sure you're choosing the right plan, and looking at what the pricing is going to be, because remember, you're paying per user as well as for the amount of storage or data, depending upon how much data you have with it. So on that base level, you're talking about having a smaller amount of space. I think it's 30 gigabytes you get for the G Suite starter plan.
Per user, but yes.
Yes, Google Workspace starter plans. Once you're above 4 users at the Google standard plan, then you go up to two terabytes of storage data across all the plans. So just remember that it's not, you don't automatically just get a terabyte or 2 terabytes per user kind of thing. You need to have 4 users before it clicks up to that higher terabyte level. But either way, it should be plenty of space for most businesses. It's just a matter of just thinking through those pieces. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to leave a comment or shoot us a question on Twitter, and I'll be happy to answer those questions. But then otherwise, I think this is the next phase of Google Workspace kind of moving into their a new phase of maturity, right? Which is that Thomas Kurian and the rest of the folks at Google want to make sure, at Alphabet really, want to make sure that Google Workspace stays profitable and viable for the future, and they want to grow in that sense. All right, everybody. With that, we've covered the productivity and the related technology news for this week. Thanks to Augusto Pinaud for putting together the show this and every week. Thank you, sir.
Pleasure.
All right, everybody. On anythingbutidle.com, you'll find our show notes for this week's episode. That contains all the links to stories, our productivity resources of the week, and any of the extra stories we couldn't cover in our time together during this episode. So there's also a text transcript that you can both read on the page. Just click that read more link. It'll expand, and you can read it right there as you're either watching or listening back to the show. And you can also download it as a PDF after the fact. After looking at the show notes, if for some reason we have missed something, let us know either in the comments of the episode. You can go ahead and post a comment there. You can also actually on Twitter, you can tweet or DM us at Anything But Idle. You can also use our contact form. So if you go to anythingbutidle.com/contact, you can go ahead and submit a contact form there, and we'll be able to hear you from there. If you have a question or comment about anything we've discussed during the show, you can do the same thing. You can also join us in our community inside of Personal Productivity Club. So if you go to anythingbutidle.com/community, you'll join our what we call a channel, but it's basically just a group inside Personal Productivity Club dedicated to the Anything But Idle show. And so you can, dialogue with us. We usually post events when we have our schedule up. We'll go ahead and post those links in there so you can join us and watch us live and engage in the conversation while we're recording the show. If this is your first time watching, feel free to subscribe, follow, whatever the lingo is in your app, so that you'll get notified, about future episodes releasing. If you're watching us in the live stream, you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel. That'll give you notifications when we go live weekly as well, for you to engage in the conversation. And feel free to rate and review us in your favorite podcast app. And that, of course, helps us expand our personal productivity community. And so thank you for doing that. And so with all of that, we will see you all next time on Anything But Idle. Here's to your productive life.